Prospect House Media.
And now, prepare yourself for the only weekly podcast you won't want to miss. Welcome to the Ameritocracy Show with Troy Edgar, live from our studios in Los Angeles and Washington, D.C.
Hey everybody, I am Troy Edgar and welcome to the Ameritocracy Show. Thank you for tuning in and checking it out. It is greatly appreciated. This podcast examines the conditions for personal and economic growth and opportunity across America. This week, I met with Sony Pictures Entertainment Vice President of Global Still Photography, Chrissy Quesada, at our L.A. studio. Chrissy's journey in the movie industry began over 30 years ago at Carolco Pictures, where she supported the release of Terminator 2. We reminisced about the early days, including her time at 20th Century Fox prior to Disney's $72 billion acquisition. In this episode, Chrissy provides an overview of her organization's role in movie production, promotion, and premieres. She explains the process of becoming an Academy member, and I share my unbelievable experience attending the 2001 Academy Awards. Lastly, we talk about the current state of the movie business, including streaming, the resurrection of the theatrical release of movies, and the impact of AI, digital photography, and technology on her industry. I hope you enjoy. How are you doing?
Good. How are you? It's nice to see you.
Yeah, very good to see you. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
You're welcome.
Yeah, you and I have known each other since 1990, and back in the day, I remember being in aerospace and going into work and being able to have a signed picture from Arnold Schwarzenegger, a black and white, from your time at Carolco, and VHS tapes, which usually you had to go down and rent them out, Yeah, so I realized early on you were connected in the entertainment industry, and from there, it's been really, really neat to watch your career kind of go and grow and everything that you've been able to do. What I wanted to do a little bit is, talk about, your involvement in the movie industry.
Okay.
Being able to kind of go through from a lot of different perspectives, looking at it, first of all, of like the career path to the industry. I think, living in Southern California, we have a lot of people that, come to Southern California to be in the music or the movie industry. But it's interesting as some of us that are here some pursue it and some don't. And the ones that do, I think a lot of them go more towards the business side because the talent thing really is something that really is a wide net, nationally, internationally, worldwide. So I wanted to kind of put a little bit of a foundation of what your role is, a little bit of the movie industry. And then I think from a parallel perspective, your job specifically is a lot about promotion and publicity. Yes. And, the parallel in my industry would be really trying to get out there. If you're in the consulting industry or an executive, is how do you promote yourself? How do you become eminent? And so I think the listeners would find it very fascinating to kind of look at it from people that are the real pros that kind of go through. So if that sounds good, what I'd like to do is just step back a little bit and maybe talk about, where you were born and raised and kind of work our way to Sony.
Sure. So I was born and raised in Long Beach, California. My mom and dad, Tony and Ray. I have an older sister. We had two half brothers, and our whole family is in Southern California. So I went to Marymount College my first 2 years, and then I went to USC. And I actually went to USC to study journalism, and then I kind of shifted gears, and I met a lot of people that were in the film department, because that's what most people go to USC for, is to study film.
That's right.
If you can get in, if you can get into the school. Famously, Steven Spielberg did not. I don't know if you know that, but he did not. He was rejected from the film school at USC.
But they now name the school after him.
Yeah, and Lucas also, I think, has a school named after him. I studied communications, and then that turned into an internship in my last semester at Carolco Pictures. And that's how I started. It was only going to be a temporary stopping point. I toyed with going to law school. And then that internship turned into a job that then turned into another job and another job and another job. So and I also found that, of course, I loved movies, I loved photography. So it was a natural progression of things.
So when you first got in the movie industry, within my type of work, I've done work for Fox, Disney, Paramount, et cetera. And Sony back in the day before we sold off to IBM, when I was at Pricewaterhouse. It was interesting is that my first experience going on a lot, I'll say probably the most pronounced experience, specifically like Paramount, which is kind of an old school lot. When you go on the lot, the business people are actually in the old parts of the buildings on the lot, and then there's actual real stuff going on. And so you can go down to have lunch and you actually see real, you see people, you see the actors, you see everybody. And I remember it was a little surreal for me living in California and seeing that. What was your first reaction as you started to kind of get into the movie industry, thinking you're doing journalism, you take this internship where you're like, this is okay, or wow, this is, what was your review?
Yeah, well, the company I was working for was small. It was a small production company. So, and of course, I didn't know anything. I really didn't know much about other than watching movies and knowing that I loved movies. So when I took this internship and they're like, it's in the marketing department. I'm like, great, marketing movies, perfect. And it was literally, we were in an office building on Sunset Boulevard, so I wasn't on a lot. But the first time I went to a lot, we were the international distributors of our movies, and TriStar was our domestic distributor, which will play into my career a little bit later. And I remember going onto the lot because we had a meeting about the Total Recall premiere, which was quite a spectacle. It was at the Griffith Park Observatory. They had tarot card readers. There was a huge dance floor. I mean, it was fun. It was really fun. This was the 90s. It's not like that anymore, but it was a good time. So when I went on the lot, I was like, oh, wow, kind of like you. And you're looking around, and you know all those shots in movies where you see like a Roman gladiator walking, and, it wasn't like that. But you were walking around like there was a lot of activity. And that was the first time I was like, oh, this is where everything really it kind of clicked. Yeah. That there's a place where things get made. And so that was my first time on a studio lot. And then later I would come to work on that lot. So, but I worked at Carolco for about 5 years. And it was a great experience. It was a great learning experience, and I still have friends that I keep in touch with that I met while working when I was like 20 years old. So it's nice, yeah.
Yeah, you're at Sony now, and in Culver City, I've been out there. Somebody always asks me, hey, what do you think about Sony when you're out there? And my reaction was, like I said, not a whole lot going on in the business buildings. It's like the most boring part, but whether you're working through, a lot of the finance side or the business sides of that was like working through royalty distributions and, and how, very interesting market, because it's in the same way that creative processes come together. You got, agents with actors and actors that have all these lien rights, and then they pass away, and these things kind of get passed through. And so it was just, I guess for me, the part that I didn't see is more the underbelly of the business part, a lot to it.
Yeah.
I remember when you were at Fox, and I think you and I met for lunch there.
You came over. Yeah.
It was by the Die Hard building.
That's right. That's right. We had just painted that mural, I think, that was near, Nakatomi Tower.
Nakatomi Tower.
The actual building.
That's right.
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
And I remember.
That's in Century City.
Yeah. Off of Avenue of the Stars, if I remember right.
Yep.
So, and we were doing work there, and I remember walking around that lot, and it was interesting because it too, a lot of history there, and the city and parts of that area really was really built around that lot.
That's why Century City is called Century City, because of 20th Century Fox. So this is just a little bit of trivia, if you want a little movie trivia. Cleopatra bankrupted 20th Century Fox, and they had to sell off most of their backlot. So if you look at old aerial photos of the Fox lot, it's basically all of Century City. And there was a desert, a New York street, whatever, I'm making it up, but whatever so they didn't have to go on location. And when Cleopatra failed miserably the way it did, they had to sell that off. And then that became Century City.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That, and again, great experiences there. But, so I, as you kind of worked at that point, I guess within Fox or maybe even at Carolco, you obviously now you're the vice president of worldwide still photography. Let's talk about when you came in and how did you find that area specifically? Because journalism you could have done, script writing you could have done, and you and I both know a lot of people from USC that definitely have that passion too.
Yes. And so that's a rough way to go. Script writers have it tough. You have to have a real passion for it. So, and obviously with the strike last year, those people were impacted greatly, as were most of the industry. It was a rough year last year for our industry, and people are still playing catch up. I have to say that I've had quite a few photographers, union photographers, who've come to me to say, I'll do anything. I just need hours because I'm going to lose my health insurance.
Oh my gosh.
So it's been tough. It's a tough recovery, just recovering from the pandemic and then onto that. But anyway, sorry, I digress. But yes. So how did I get into photography specifically? So within the marketing department, at every studio, there is a photo department, which falls under publicity. And I was working with the creative advertising person at Carolco and the photo person. And I found both equally interesting, but I always had a love for photography. So I kind of veered in that direction. And when Carolco was shutting down, Columbia and TriStar were merging, and they were looking for an extra photo person. And I had worked closely with a woman named Barbara Lakin, who would go on to become my boss at Sony the first time. This is my first go around at Sony. So I went from Carolco to Sony, and she brought me on as a junior editor. And that's kind of like the Reader's Digest version of my transition to working in the studio system. And then from Sony, I went to Fox. I was there for quite a while, and now I'm back at Sony.
Talk a little bit about like the movie industry in general. You know, a lot of people, and just to kind of put big building blocks out there. People that I know, there's some people that are financing movies. And so they, with that, not always, but a lot of times the executive producers are people that have done some of the funding. Yeah. But, you have the production companies, the ones that actually do it. And a lot of times when you walk in and you watch a movie, you see like 4 or 5 companies presented up there. Yeah. Maybe give a little bit of a decomposition of the industry or what it takes to make a movie, because then that and then show where Sony fits into that.
Yeah, so we produce most of our own movies. There's a few different routes that we go. So we produce our own movies, but we usually have, a finance partner with us. It used to just be the studio took all the risks. They greenlit the movies, and if they failed, they failed. And if they didn't, then they held all the profit. Now it's better to bring on financiers. So if you see a lot of companies that you've never heard of at front, chances are that it's a partnership, and they probably contributed part of the budget. I'll give you an example. So Anyone But You was a sleeper hit for us last year. It was a small romantic comedy with Glenn Powell and Sydney Sweeney. It didn't open very well, but all of a sudden it just kept going and going and going. And it's made over $250 million. Wow. And it only costs I don't want to quote numbers, but less than $50 million probably to make. And I think it's made over $250 million now worldwide, which is amazing. And we had a partnership. So we don't get all of that money, but we get a lot of it. So yes, movies have become very expensive to make. And now with the streamers, they seem to have unlimited funds. And they do spend. They definitely outspend studios in many ways. And so that's the competition now, right? So I think that's one of the reasons why we bring on these finance partners. The other thing too, during the pandemic, Sony, our leaders were credited. They were criticized at first for not starting a streaming service, but they held strong that we were going to be content providers to everybody. And so what they ended up doing, rather than just dumping these movies in theaters that nobody was going to see, we licensed them to Netflix. So there were a handful of movies, a movie called Fatherhood with Kevin Hart. There was an animated movie, Mitchell and the Machine. So there was a variety of them that they released. And I think we carry the copyright. We still own it, but we license it to them to show for a limited amount of time. And that turned out to be quite profitable for us.
So with like distribution companies versus production, Sony play on both sides.
Yes. So Sony actually is a distribution company. Yeah. We just did Napoleon. So that was a partnership with Apple.
Yeah, I was going to talk to you about that. I think the word got back to you. I didn't get any of that promotional stuff for that.
Yeah.
So, no, but that'll be a different show.
That's an off-camera conversation,
there you go.
Right?
Oh, believe me, it will be. But no, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, and we're going to do 2 more Apple movies this year.
Okay.
So I think and this probably leads into something you were probably going to talk about is theatrical versus streaming.
Yeah.
So what I think some of Apple certainly is discovering that they need a theatrical window for their movies because that's an extra revenue stream. And I am not qualified to talk about their business model at all and how they make money, but they certainly spend it because they're Apple, right? They have a lot of money to spend. So if you look at a movie like Killers of the Flower Moon, they spent a lot. They spent a lot on marketing. They spent a lot on awards, and basically got shut out. So that's the risk, right? We can talk about it. Well, I know you have an Academy thing on your list, so we can talk about that later. But so I think as far as theatrical goes, like I said, the streaming companies are realizing that they need that theatrical window to make that money, and then it goes on streaming. So we are acting as a marketing and distribution arm for those titles. And I don't know what the pay structure is. I don't know what percentage we get of the theatrical run, but our departments Apple has handed over all the materials. We are going to work. We work with them, and we share assets and stuff with them as we release them. But we are in charge now of the marketing and distribution. So there's 2 movies. One is untitled at this point, but it's got Scarlett Johansson and Channing Tatum. And the other one is called Wolves, and it's with Brad Pitt and George Clooney. So we're all very excited about that one.
Oh my God, that would be a good one.
Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit of like Sony Pictures Entertainment, the bigger picture. Like you talked about in the movie industry. I have friends that are in the entertainment industry, but in different parts of it, like gaming, et cetera. What about the overall bigger picture of Sony, outside of what you're doing in motion pictures?
Oh, okay. So Sony has PlayStation, which is a very big, part of the Sony business, Sony Electronics, of course, and then TV. So a lot, and TV is not really my area, but if you watch a Sony show, you will see the Sony logo, and then you'll probably see a Fox logo if it's playing on Fox. So we sell our TV product to different cable providers, TV, they air all over the place. So, and Netflix, we do have a partnership. I think Obliterated was the last show that we had on Netflix. So all of those components together, sort of make up the Sony family. And we try to have as much synergy with those different departments as possible. I can talk a little bit about my involvement with the electronics team recently, and then also with PlayStation, if you want me to.
I would really appreciate that.
Okay, yeah. So for PlayStation, we just did Last of Us, which is not ours. It's TV, obviously, but it aired on HBO, big hit. We also did Uncharted, which was a video game and a movie that starred Tom Holland. And I believe there was one more that, of course, now I'm forgetting. Gran Turismo, which I saw it recently. It is a fantastic movie. If you haven't seen it, I really recommend it. And it didn't do as well as we had hoped, but it did make money. But seeing it, that's been the reaction for everybody. Like, oh yeah, I would have never seen that, but it's really good. So I recommend it to anybody who can catch it on.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's the PlayStation part of it. So now we have a partnership with them because video games are so successful, and turning them into movies and TV shows are obviously what people like. So Josh, who my nephew, he's a big video game. He tried to teach me when we were about to do Uncharted. We all went to San Diego and visited. And Susie, my sister, walked in and was like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I don't know. Josh is trying to teach me how to play this game. I have no aptitude for I was just curious what it was." So, and then on the electronic side, there's a big business-to-business initiative. So I meet with the electronics people regularly because Sony does have a really sophisticated line of cameras and lenses that they encourage our photographers to use on set. And at first it was a little weird. We were like, wait, are you asking us to force them? No, but we have this department and we will loan them. We will send people to set if they need help.
Right.
And 90% of the photographers switched over to also, like they got rid of their Canon, their Nikon, their Fuji, and they primarily shoot with Sony. And then a couple months ago, we are working on the 100th anniversary for Columbia Pictures. That is this year. There's all sorts of activities going on. And we didn't have any lot photos, aerial photos of the lot. And back in the old days, we would hire a helicopter, get a photographer, strap them in, and just zoom around the lot and take pictures. Well, now we can do it with drones. And Sony does have an AirPeak. It's called the AirPeak 2, I think. And our electronics friends provided a drone operator and a director, and we spent the day doing updated drone photography. So those sorts of business to business things I think are really interesting. And I like touching those other parts of Sony, which we never really did before. And so I'm really glad that those are initiatives that, that we're working on.
It's interesting is that, with Sony, it kind of reminds me of like the reason why I work with IBM is like IBM has software and they do consulting. Yeah. I'm up against Deloitte, Accenture, KPMG, and none of them have a technology arm. So a lot of it is, we kind of have the best of both worlds. And on the consulting side, we try to stay agnostic and not pick, like you said, we're not forcing people to use IBM products.
Right.
On my side, we're looking at the business problem. And so with Sony, the Sony Electronics piece, I mean, that's something very unique. And Sony Electronics, I've worked for, other competitors, NEC Electronics and some of the others that are out there that kind of go against, and it's definitely a competitive advantage. And that was one of my questions, is to kind of see how do you kind of cross promote, but it definitely is, do you see any other companies in the industry that kind of have a similar, like corporate structure like you do, where they have electronics or a different arm that makes them useful?
Not electronics. I don't think. I'm trying to think of who owns everybody.
I'll give you an example of the one I was thinking of, like at Disney, doing work at Disney. So, they obviously ABC, they have the TV part.
Yes.
But I always was fascinated with their ESPN component.
Yep.
And then they have their gaming, and then their parks.
Yes.
And so where it, they could always leverage their business a little bit by what's going good and bad, but it's also becoming a little bit of a problem if you're following them right now in the news.
Yes.
And so I think with the electronics piece, it's totally outside from a Sony perspective, even though it's a key part of the creative process.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of unique.
Yeah, and there's also the Venice camera, which is a professional film camera, digital. It's not film, but digital, that they use on set. So there are other pieces that they're always working on to have this partnership with our film side. And it's not just Sony that uses certainly the Venice camera. Everybody uses them. Yeah. So yes, that is a unique. And it was nice too when we met with our electronics friends, like they really wanted to know what the photographers thought. And for a while this is a little techie, but their white balance was not great, and they fixed it immediately. And the next version of that camera that came out, it was good. So they do want feedback. That's the other nice thing about this department, is they want the photographers to tell them what works and what doesn't. So that just improves the quality of the product. But obviously the TV business, they're probably one of the best. I don't know for sure, but I'm assuming that, when you think of a really good electronics, that Sony is definitely up there. So
good deal. Well, we didn't change out the equipment today just for you, just so you know. So we do the same thing. But let me just switch a little bit. Sure. So now specifically in your role, if you could, Vice President Worldwide Still Photography, talk a little bit about that role, what it does, kind of the major components. Okay.
I'll give you sort of an overview of it. So I have a team. I have a team of 3 editors, a coordinator, and then myself. And roughly I think we're going to do a little bit more movies this year, but I think we roughly do about 20 to 22 movies a year. So we split those titles. And what my department does is hire photographers that work on set. There is a full-time photographer, which is called a unit photographer, that shoots everything that's going on set, all the scenes, behind the scenes, and just captures all this content. So if you see photos on our social pages, websites, if you still look at magazines or newspapers, any photography-related materials comes out of my department. And it sounds like it's not a lot, but some movies we can get up to 30,000 images. My all-time record for the most images I've ever looked through on one movie was 96,000 images on Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Wow. So, which was one of my favorite movies to work on, because I'm a big Tarantino fan. But yeah, that's what we do, and we coordinate photo shoots mainly for our international territories, because when you see talent here on the cover of a magazine, the magazine has photographed them. Well, they can't do that all over the world. So we kind of do these generic shoots that we can supply. And yeah, that's kind of it in a nutshell.
Let me ask you this, like kind of job breakdown, like you said, you've got basically the production part that, that is like shooting on site or whatever. The promotion parts, like the film might be in the can and you're trying to get all the promotion stuff ready to really start the distribution of the press and or continue it. And then the premieres. And I'll be lying to you to not tell you I get a little bit jealous when I hear of all the premieres that are out there.
I'll put you on the list. Well, I know you could have stood in the fan pen for Madam Web. I mean, I know you really missed out on that one.
That and what was it? To Die Another Day? What was the James Bond?
Spectre.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I'm just saying, but if you look at those three different models, being on site, the promotion side, and could you just talk? I think you did do a good job of talking a little bit about the first one, which is really like what happens behind the scenes. A lot of people think it's just the cameras that are filming stuff, but there's more cameras than what's just filming, and that's what your point is there. But when you get to getting ready to promote, and that's what I think would be interesting. You said 96,000. It was your record. Yeah, my wife has more than that at a charity event, but I would say that like anybody that watches or listens to the show, we're all like trying to figure out how do you promote in Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn, et cetera, and, getting the right shots and all that. And this isn't about an editorial of how to do that, but it's the process of like how it's done professionally is kind of fascinating to me. So I guess in that promotion piece, the middle one, after they've done everything out on site, can you pick up there and maybe talk about that and the preparation between that and getting ready for premieres?
Sure. So there's obviously many different departments within marketing, which I can tell you what they are. I couldn't tell you exactly how they do their jobs, but there's media, there's advertising, there's our digital team. Advertising is obviously when you see TV spots, when you see a movie trailer, when you see movie posters, and they're sort of at the forefront, right, of promoting our movie. The first thing we do usually for the promotion of a movie is do a trailer launch. And that is an official launch that every department works together in. Not only does it go into the theater like it did in the old days where we would just release a trailer and that would be it, we release photos, our digital team does a push. Occasionally we will have our talent, if they have social media, post on their social media. So that's really the first thing out of the gate usually. And then things trickle through with that. Sometimes there's film festivals. Some movies go to film festivals. There is something called CinemaCon that happens every year in Las Vegas in April. And all the studios come. It's for theater distributors, theater owners and distributors. And talent will come. They do a dog and pony. They present footage. They say this is our upcoming slate. And so the theater owners know what they're going to get for the following year and the rest of the year. So that's exciting because talent comes in for that, and there's some press that gets done. We do some things there if we have to catch up with stuff. Like we did a little photo shoot with Denzel Washington last year for Equalizer. And so we try to get, whenever you have talent, at a place, we try to get them to do stuff so we can bank it, so that's the publicity part of it and the advertising part of it. Media buys. So if you see billboards, if you see TV spots, that's all bought media. I'm really simplifying it. If my friends listen, if my media friends listen to this, they're going to be like, Chrissy, we do a lot more than that. But this is just kind
of talking to me, they'll get it.
Yeah, this is just overview. You can have them come in. And our digital team, they do a lot.
Okay.
That's where the business has really changed.
Yeah.
And there is a lot of pressure on them to engage talent, because a lot of talent, they don't have social media and they don't want social media. I believe there was, I will not tell you who said this, but it was very funny. He was an older actor who said, I'm 55 years old. I think he was 57, actually. I'm 57 years old and social media is stupid.
Yeah.
Okay, great, done. So you have to work around that, right? So I actually thought that was very funny because he was really serious. Like, I'm never getting on social. Not to mention the fact that who needs that?
Right.
Like this particular star does not need a social media feed.
Right.
And one more place for people to, crap all over him.
Yeah.
Right. But it is helpful when our talent has high social media followings, and young people do. I think I just read that Timothée Chalamet has, and don't quote me on this, but I think close to like 80 million followers or something. So it impacts. It definitely does. So sometimes they'll post their own content, like exclusive. Some talent will post stuff from set and we don't always know about it. And we're like, oh, look at Tom Hardy posted this great photo from Venom. I mean, there's not a lot you can do, but we try to control it as much as we can. So And then there's closer to release, there's a press junket. It usually takes place at a hotel, and talent come in from the film, and they literally will sit in a hotel room and they are interviewed. And it's like a round robin, and it's TV. It's sometimes a little bit of print. Sometimes we do a photo call. And what a photo call is we get them for like 10 minutes. There'll be sort of an elaborate backdrop that we build with the title of the movie. They'll pose for a few photos, and it's an extra hit, right? We send that out. And then that usually backs right up. The premiere is usually a week later. And then there's a whole other department that does all of the events. So, and that's within Publicity as well.
Okay, is that where we start shifting to the premiere, getting ready for the premiere?
Yeah. So right before, so I'll give you an example. So one of my team members is in New York right now because last night was the premiere for Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. And the junket was, I believe, either the day before or yesterday, the same day. And then they did the premiere last night, and they did New York talk shows in the this morning. So that's kind of leading right up to the release. And
that's exciting.
Yeah.
A lot of coordination going on there. Chrissy, can I ask you a question? Like in my business within like technology, and I won't say specific to IBM, but it's like this in a lot. There's the difference between kind of earned media and paid media. And, it seems like, movies may be a little bit more sexier than tech, just a little bit. But I could imagine that you get a lot of earned media, people that, want to talk to you guys, talk to your talent, get pictures, do all that, and really kind of show, quote, they're connected, and provide a service to all the periodicals that service the industry.
Yes.
But, paid stuff is, and I'll be truthful, I'm always skeptical a little bit. Is like I write a lot of stuff for IBM, especially in the federal market. And I do a lot of stuff, and I do both. Sometimes they're like, hey, we really want to talk about something, but no one's asking us, so we're going to talk about it, and through that we're promoting. And so I was just kind of curious in the movie industry, and for people that might be listening, kind of that differentiation in your mind. What do you think is most effective, or do you have the luxury of being kind of the prize, so you don't, the earned media comes a lot easier, because it's hard sometimes to do that. And I guess one last thing I would add on is, like, when you're at a Fortune 500 company that's got multiple lanes, the corporate itself doesn't want to weigh in on everything. And then you get to the components or the divisions. They also have a myriad of businesses. They don't want to weigh in and be like heavy in federal or heavy in industrial products or heavy in Japan and industrial products. So it really kind of pushes the responsibility down to people that are actually in the sector. Yeah. And we're trying to be eminent. We're trying to represent the brand, and then it kind of forces you to play within your lane. So, like in federal, my biggest issue with federal has been that there is a lot of great stuff. Taxpayers pay a tremendous amount of money, but the way the media structure is set up, this is my impression, unless you're a firebrand and it's a hot political issue, then it goes national. But people don't get an appreciation for the professionals that are in the federal market or the significant things that happen. If you live in, Washington, D.C., Maryland, or Virginia, you're covered by the trade stuff. But the messaging doesn't get out past that. And something I'm hoping to do through this podcast also is I take a lot of stories out of Washington, D.C. and take them to the rest of America that don't get picked up because there's no view there. And hoping that eventually that gets earned media. But, because I'm not paying to put it out there. But I guess on your side and with all of that, I guess I'd just be interested in your perspective of paid media versus earned media.
Yeah. I mean, since I work in publicity, there is no payment. You have to. That's where contacts are very important. So we have very talented publicists that work for us. And are some movies easier than others? Of course. The Brad Pitt, George Clooney, of course, everybody's going to want them. Will they go on everything? Probably not. But, they'll be out there working, and that's easy. If you have a star that's unknown or that's not a star yet, it's a little harder. There's not a lot of interest. And so I think you have to work harder to, like, you were saying, the stories that just aren't out there, that aren't sexy, that aren't being picked up, you have to figure out a way to get them out there. And so that's where young people, though, do come into play. And back to the digital side of things, they are more digital savvy. They are on social media. They don't think it's stupid, and they will cross promote that way. So, but everything in publicity is basically free, right? Like, when you get a magazine, it's not free. They say free, but it's not free.
Yeah.
And, when you have talent that's on the cover of a magazine and, all of those things added up are the publicity campaign. So talk shows, magazine covers, social media, and then these press junkets where you get a lot of stuff done in one day. And that also includes our international markets too. So all around the world, we have offices in all our big territories and some small territories, and they do their own promotions, because what works in marketing in the United States doesn't always work, in other parts of the world. So a lot of times you'll see a completely different campaign for a movie in Korea than you do for, here, just depending on what the sensibility is. Does that answer the question?
No, it does. And, it's interesting, like your example of the person that's on set and snaps a picture and then puts it out on social media and indirectly becomes good or bad publicity. The old adage, any publicity is good publicity, not always true these days. Right. But, an interesting dilemma that I've come across is because in my world, in the corporate side, the responsibility to promote is pushed down so far that I think you get to a certain level where the companies expect the employees to do it. You expect you may not be this harsh, but you expect your talent to help promote whatever you're doing. In the olden days, I think in your industry, from what it seems, I don't know for sure, but it seems like at a minimum, they got to show up to the junket. At a minimum, they need to kind of do a couple appearances. Right. But in my world, at a minimum, if we've paid, $3,000 to send them to an event, it would be nice if they took some pictures and showed they were there. It'd be nice they were meeting with their clients, and it would be nice if they would promote it. But it's not. We can't require that. Right. And it's interesting. An example I've used on another show is that I had a situation with, that I was the leader of, and we were doing some big thing, and this person was actually a pretty important part of it. And so the night it was over, we're getting ready for the next day. And I'm like, hey, it's time for the push. And so I asked the person, hey, let's do this. And they looked at me and said, this is my social media. This isn't yours. And I'm not sure that's something I even want to do. And I remember it kind of took my breath away, because I think I lost myself years ago. It's I wish I was, I mean, a lot of people say, hey, be careful what you put on social media. And I'm very careful on some cautious things of where my exact locations are and stuff. But I mean, as far as when you get to a certain level of promoting and trying, especially in consulting, you want to be known for doing stuff. Sure. And so I was just kind of curious, the example you gave for talent kind of going rogue. And do you see a change a little bit in the industry where they kind of require talent to take on a little bit of an electronic mantle, where some of the older talent is look, I'm not doing it. Because it can be a liability, especially when they have millions of followers versus someone, with a lot less. Yeah. I was just curious.
Yeah. Most talent are willing to post. I mean, they're in the movie. Yeah. Sometimes they're a producer on the movie, so that they have even more incentive for it to do well. But like I said, it's usually it's like the old guard and the new guard, and the younger people coming up, they definitely know the value of social media. And I have heard too that a lot of times when we're casting movies, if they're smaller parts or maybe parts that they're significant but not that significant, a lot of times, and again, this is just what I've heard, is that casting directors will ask them what their social media following is, because it is such a big deal. We did a movie last year called Thanksgiving. Eli Roth directed it, and there was a social media star whose name, of course, I'm going to forget. I apologize. But she was a social media marketer for sure, and marketing herself. And as a result, she was also an actress, but got cast in this movie. And I think one of the reasons she did was because of her social media following. So it definitely can help a movie, especially ones that are targeted towards younger people, for sure.
Yeah. If we kind of step a little bit away from your day job and talk a little bit about the creative process.
Okay.
One of the things that I think is interesting is that, and I would, maybe I'd even use it in doing a podcast, which is on the lower end of creativity, but definitely you want to be thought through. And I want everybody that's associated with my show, the production people, the film people, all the social media, I want them to kind of have an idea of what was in my mind of what I'm hoping to be projected. And so probably ad nauseum, I think I may drive some of them crazy, but I think what I try to do is I try to get everything on paper and push it out so that they at least see the vision. I think in your industry, if I remember right, you sometimes get to see scripts of these things, so you can start to get these in your mind. To talk a little bit about that creative process and how does the production of a movie and the product start getting you involved, and how early is that?
My department is actually involved very early because we work on it from the time the movie is greenlit until release and beyond. Because we technically work on the home entertainment releases, and we go all the way through. The structure has changed a little bit. There used to be separate departments for home entertainment, but we work on everything. So when a movie, and I have to go back for 1 second, Troy, I'm sorry, I forgot to mention somebody in my department who is key. Okay. She is a freelancer, but she's incredibly talented. So in my department, I do have a full-time retoucher compositor. And I encourage everybody to look up Empire Magazine, which is a UK-based film magazine. They did a Ghostbusters cover. It was a double cover. You put the two covers together, they make one image. It's glow in the dark. Her name is Elizabeth, and along with my editor, Monica, they worked really hard on this, and she just recently won a creative award for it called the Muse Award. So I'm sorry, that's a little off topic, but I can't believe I forgot to mention her when I was talking about in my department, but I just wanted to mention that and give a little shout out to Ghostbusters, and if anybody wants to look up this cover, it's really impressive. Okay, so back to the script.
You had me at glow in the dark.
Yeah, yeah, I think they're going to become collector's covers because, and we love Empire Magazine because there are so few print publications now, especially in the United States. They're one of the last film magazines. I mean, they are thick. These issues are thick, and they run tons of photos, which we love. Okay, so back to
and what I'll do too, Chrissy, is I'll have our team put stuff in the show notes so that they can see the links to Empire and all that, and talk about Elizabeth too.
Okay, great, great.
Yeah, thank you.
And we can talk about, I will name my whole team maybe at the end, but yes, I just wanted to, I can't believe I forgot to mention her. Okay, so yes, so early on we do get a script so we can read through it, because I kind of want to get an idea of what kind of movie it is so we can find a photographer that's appropriate. I will tell you, we shoot a lot in Atlanta. That seems to be, that's where the most tax incentives are. There's a hotbed of film activity. Lots of people have moved from L.A. to Atlanta to work there. And I think Marvel just built studios there. I know that Tyler Perry, he stopped building, I believe, but he was building a huge production facility, but recently stopped for, I can't remember why. But so there's a lot of production down there, and that's where we film majority of our movies. And so, yes, so we do read the script early on so we can find an appropriate photographer that's also local. We try to hire locals wherever we can, just to save money, of course, but also because it's nice to have people in the local economy and giving it back. So, yes, I do get a script early on. We do read it. We break it down. We pull out scenes that we think are important. The thing is that our photographers are very experienced. They're on set every day, so they're going to cover everything anyway, but we always like to do call outs, for specific stuff that we think are going to be important in marketing the movie.
2002, 2001, I went to the Academy Awards. I was at PricewaterhouseCoopers, and they have, something I could actually do, which was seat filling. And so I ended up having the opportunity to.
Who'd you sit next to?
The guy from Crouching Tiger.
Chow Yun-fat.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, there was a bunch of. It was pretty incredible.
Yeah. Did you like being a seat filler?
I loved it. Well, and just a little bit of you got to do your sidebar, so I went up there for that, and they take you into really a whole day process. They indoctrinate you. They kind of scare you a little bit of like, don't do these things. And then what I realized, and kind of going back to this, I'll call it the guild of photographers that you deal with, is there seemed to be like all these different cottage industries represented, and how they would either come to the Academy is they also had opportunities to be seat fillers. And so I would get to see people that supported different, and it was a very close knit group of people. And then, you know, when you get that, I guess the final part of that experience is that when I finally, you know, you're sitting there kind of on the side, they let you have cocktails before. You're like, you know, you're feeling like you're in a tux. You're feeling like you're really doing something. And then, you know, they'll in between the breaks, they move you out wherever there's and you get to sit there. And then you are told like immediately they will yank you right out when the person comes. You get up and go, no questions asked. And the person, it was like the second or third row, and I sat down, and the person got up and left and never came back. So I sat there the whole time, and it was like, you know, talking to people, and I, you know, it's funny. If you ever go to like trade events and you see people and you don't know who's really who. Yeah. So like they don't have, I mean, maybe I'm somebody, maybe I'm not.
You might be a producer that they don't know about, right?
And so, you know, you get, and because I've sat there the whole time, they're like, this guy must be somebody who's got three, you know, third row from the front, in the middle. And it was just a great experience. But I was, you know, like I said, kind of going back to your story, I was thinking the academies, you know, that's like the epitome of that, the top of the meritocracy. Yep. And then whether you're a contract photographer, your talent, wherever you are in that, it's like everything comes together for that day. Yeah. And so I wanted to talk to you a little bit as a lead-in to you being an Academy member.
Yeah.
And so I know that that process is, again, back to meritocracy, is there's a little bit of a process that it takes to get to be able to do that. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. And I have not been to the Academy Awards. Okay. So much to Susie's chagrin, I have not. I've only been an Academy member for 2 years. Okay. So for as far as tickets go, you have to put in for a lottery. And then if you're chosen, then they tell you where your seats are, you know, where you're going. And so anyway, but we have not done that yet. But hopefully next year we'll be going. And then they do give you the option. If you don't get tickets, would you like to be a seat filler? And I'm like, no. Nothing sounds more awful than running around in heels, you know, trying to run from seat to seat. So I have not done that, and I have not signed up to be a seat filler, but maybe I will.
I highly recommend it.
Maybe I will. Okay, so the Academy. So there are different branches of the Academy, and, you know, actors, directors, visual effects, and I'm in the marketing and publicity branch. And there are certain requirements, like you have to have a certain title, you have to have been in the business for a certain amount of time. There's just different requirements. And then if you meet those requirements, then you find two sponsors. They write you a letter, and then you submit. There's a series of questions you have to answer. You submit them with your list of credits and or resume, and then there's a committee for each branch, and they literally go around to every applicant. But that's the process. And then everybody votes to nominate Best Picture, and then when the final ballot is out, everybody votes. I know I'm going to leave something out, but picture, all the acting categories, production design, documentary short, animated short, and I'm sure there's something in there that I'm forgetting. But everybody, but all of the specialty stuff. I keep going back to visual effects just because those awards are handed out at a separate, the creative, what they call the creative awards, the creative art awards, they're handed out at a separate ceremony. Or else the Academy Awards would be like 5 hours long.
Wow. Yeah. Well, no, thank you for sharing that. I know you get to see a lot of the movies and screen them and get ready to kind of look at that. But something just to kind of switch, one other topic I want to hit on before we close is, you know, a lot of activity. Obviously, I'm in the technology business, so a lot of focus, you know, from an IBM perspective, and IBM's not by itself, is on artificial intelligence and AI. You know, both of us probably know people that were affected directly with the strikes that had went on. And some of that had to do a little bit with, you know, what's the future of the movie industry. And so I was just kind of curious, obviously you've been very clear to not overstate where you're at in the industry, you're specific, but from your perspective, you know, you have digital camera, you know, and all the digital media part, which still photography used to be black and white pictures like you gave me back in the day. And what is your view of where the industry's at and things that you see that, you know, are you worried from your role specific or the industry in general?
I'm not so much worried from my own role. but I know that the industry is still trying to figure this out. And I'm sure, as you could tell from the press that came out after the strike, actors are very concerned. And honestly, I don't know. I don't know. I know that there are tools in AI that can be useful, even in my job, and specifically when we retouch a photo, if we need, a background. Even the Adobe suite now, they do have some AI generated stuff. We have not used it yet, just because we're treading very lightly on AI, just because of all of the chatter around it and the loss of jobs. So at this point, I can't really say. I don't really have a sense outside of my area, like what it's going to be like. But, there are certainly advantages to it. I can see if an actor dies in the middle of a movie, which has happened. Paul Walker, they hadn't finished shooting the last Fast and Furious. I don't think they used any AI, but they used a double to just fill in the back of his head. But I can see like maybe that being useful, but I know that actors are very worried about it on that side of things. So jury's still out. Maybe you can have me back in a couple of years and I'll have a better opinion, but...
Well, it's interesting. Like I follow the music industry a lot, and I would say that there is a lot of concern. Even if you are into going to live concerts, it's almost accepted that half the concerts for some of the pop shows aren't even live. They're just soundtracks. They're going, and so you're really not getting to see true musical capability, kind of in an a cappella type fashion, and so. As a fan, and that's all I could be on the movie side is like you look at it and it's like, I don't know, maybe it's old school. I'm rooting for some things to stay the same, even though I know things are going to be changing. But I would think in your industry, it's funny. It's like all the filters, all these things that are available. I have some friends that are really into social media and they do this crazy stuff just on their phone. And I'm like, and some of it, definitely is AI assisted. Yeah. I'll just give a kind of a little bit of an example. One of my government clients does classified work, and everybody thought it'd be cool to take a picture out in front of their headquarters, and so, but I don't think we were supposed to do that. So there was ways that you could kind of rearrange the backdrop. And somebody had an app on their phone and could just boom, 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 and next thing we weren't at that spot, but we really were trying to preserve the image of the team that was there. Yeah. But it was, and I was sitting back and I feel like I'm advanced. I'm like, whoa, and just to try and keep up. So I'm sure in your industry, it's like it's never ending and changing. Right.
I will say one thing on the technology side. That we do have this stage. It used to be called the Innovation Stage, and recently Sony bought Pixamundo, and it is this incredible stage that we're actually going to do. It's not really built for photo shoots, but in conjunction with our 100th anniversary, we are going to shoot some stuff there. But they will take a scene and it's moving behind them, and I swear you don't know that they're not on location. And it's this wraparound. There's all these LED screens. Of course, I don't know all the technology, but it's really impressive. So that's also a way to it's in a way talking about the backlot that we did at the beginning of the podcast, in Century City. Yeah. Now it's all contained. Like you can be in the Sahara, you can be, wherever you want to be on this stage, and it's really impressive. So I've been very impressed by that technology, and I'm kind of excited to see what we do with, because photos they haven't done yet, so it's kind of new for them. So I'm kind of excited to see that.
Yeah, awesome. Well, Chrissy, as we kind of get ready to close, to talk a little bit about we've covered a lot of ground. We've looked at the industry, and we've looked at specifically your role within that. Like I said in the beginning, what I was hoping to be able to do is also leave something out there for professionals that are really trying to battle their way to be eminent and try to think through and how do you kind of find that balance between self-promotion to a point it's sickening versus, hey, I've got to do this to kind of put myself out there. Yeah. And I thought, maybe kind of in closing, if you kind of look at the way you promote movies and really kind of get out there, any insight or anything is kind of a perspective that might be useful for the listeners to think about as they're trying to kind of do stuff through their career like that.
Yeah, you mean specifically in the movie career or just in their own career
Just in
and
general,
trying to promote
trying
themselves?
to promote themselves, like how you promote a thing called the movie.
Yeah, yeah. Well, again, going back to social media, obviously that's the low hanging fruit. That's the easiest thing to do is to get to find something that hooks people and where you get your social media following up. That to me would be the biggest thing, because I sort of was a little more old school when I started. So for me, my self-promotion came from just having connections, going to lots of industry events, making sure I'm meeting people. I am good about being social with some of my, work colleagues. This is real basic stuff, I know, but this is kind of what I did. And going to as many professional conventions, events as you possibly can. Because I think it's really, and in this business, certainly, it's about the connections that you have. Because people that, you work with them for a while and you're like, oh, thank God I don't have to work with that person anymore. And 5 years later, they're right back with you. So, you have to be nice to everybody. And you do have to actively, I don't know if it's so much in my case to promote myself, but just to let people know that I'm still around. I'm here. Our Publicist Guild luncheon was it was last week. It was last Friday. And that's where we give out awards to various publicists. And for, I got one year for my charity work. And then we also give the award for, best film campaign, best movie campaign. Barbie, of course, won this year, and well-deserved by my Warner Brothers friends. And I think it's important, too, because I know that a lot of the young people are like, do we have to go to this? I'm like, yes. No, you don't have. What I always say is you don't have to, but I highly encourage you. And I encourage you to walk around and meet some of your colleagues at other studios because it's hard. It's hard. And especially for people who are not always socially adept. It can be tough, but I would encourage people to always, whatever industry you're in, go to as many industry type events as you can, join those clubs, I know a lot of people that I know have, and I'm going to forget the name of it.
The Toastmasters.
The Toastmasters, thank you. Yes. And that's also, I found that to be, I didn't do it, but I know a lot of my colleagues back in the day did, and they found it very interesting, contacts, helpful when doing things like this. So that's.
Let me ask you this. I guess I did have one. So when you not only know the business of still photography, and we talked a lot about that, finding the photographers, trying to get out there, and then there's the art of doing your job. And I personally outside of work, I know you're into photography. And also, you shot my wife and I's wedding.
That's right.
So, and so there's also part of you from an art and an editing perspective that you know what you like, you know what you see, and then when you see it, how to kind of capture it. And again, maybe to take that experience that you have to the masses of this show. And this goes back to them promoting themselves in social media. I always notice when I go to places, I'm very careful of, I size up the picture. I look at it the way it is, and then I ask somebody to take the picture, and I walk them right to where I'm at, and I show them. I put I'm like, look, I need you to do it just like this, and they're like,
do you put tape on the floor so they know where to stand? Do they have a mark so they can stand on it?
If I could bring tape in a suit, I would. But by the time they get done, they're a little offended that they said yes. But I to me, the shot that you put in social media is as important.
It is.
And so a lot of times I see people doing really cool stuff with terrible pictures, and then I think. So I guess your perspective, you're an artist too with photography. You know the art and the science of still photography, but any nuggets that you would put out there and like capturing yourself in social media and what works and from your perspective?
Well, I can only do my personal opinion. I think that people use way too many filters. Like I know the Kardashians are like what everybody wants to be on social media with 200 million followers. But I would not recommend that. Yeah, you can touch up yourself a little bit, fine, whatever, but be recognizable and also be discreet. Like you don't have to take a photo everywhere, right? And I think and I know there are a lot of social media people who make a living doing that would say that's absolutely not true. Don't do that. But I'm not talking about those people. You're talking about people like us who
professionals
just want to
promote themselves. They need to. They don't do it enough to be an expert at it.
Right.
But they do it enough to show they don't know how to do it. And
but the other thing, too, the other side of that is that everybody thinks they're an expert, and that's part of the problem with photography now. Is that the idea is that, well, any idiot can take a photo, and so I think it's being selective, in what you're shooting, where you're shooting yourself, and whatever the message is that you're trying to put out there. And that's where a lot of social media people have gotten really good. I mean, really good. Like they stick to message. They don't post anything that's not 100% on brand for them. And maybe that is, having a million filters on and not looking natural. But I would say if you're going to post photos, yes, make sure they're in focus. Make sure they're not dark. If it's just for fun, like who cares, right? But if you're actually out there trying to promote yourself, you want to make sure they're clean, well lit images. Yeah. That look good, aren't silly, and aren't inappropriate. I mean, that sounds pretty basic, but that's my advice.
No, I thought I'd go to the expert on that one too. So, well, hey, Chrissy, thank you so much for coming on the show. This has been awesome.
You're welcome. It was good to see you.
Yeah, very nice to see you. And can't wait for the Napoleon II when I get to go to that one. So with that, I hope you have a good day. Thank you, Chrissy.
Thank you. You're welcome, Troy.
Okay. Thanks again for joining me today on the Ameritocracy Show. Be sure to follow me on social media and our website at troyedgar.com, where you can get more information and sign up for my weekly email. I hope you have a great week.